Welcome back to Biblical Receipts Podcast here. And yet again, we're back. We're talking about your favorite pastor, Gino Jennings, and the misinformation and lies that he loves to spew to his gullible fan base. Okay? Now, I'm going to let you hear what he says, and we're going to unpack it on the other side. Let's go.
And then you get some folks say, did you know it was black people in the Bible? Okay. First man that was made was an African man. That's right.
So, did you hear what he said? He said the first man that was made was African. That's what Gino said. You heard it. Can't make this up. So, now I make a point, I ain't trying to brag on it, but I do make a point of reading the Bible from cover to cover every year. Every year. And I start over. Why? Because I need to know the facts. I need to know the facts. So I not only read one translation, I read multiple. But I do read from Genesis to Revelation every year, and I've been doing it for the past I don't know how many years. Because I like to know what's in the book I read. I don't like to just spew BS off the top of my head or because I heard somebody else say it. Okay? So he said the first man was an African man, i.e., black. Okay? But see, nowhere in Genesis does it say that Adam was an African. Nowhere does it say that. In any book of the Bible. Nowhere. Now, I know many of you are clicking off because you love Gino. You don't like to hear anything negative about Gino. You spend all of your time protecting Gino and defending Gino, but Gino can't defend himself. He can't defend himself. So just let's look at some facts. He said the first man was African, right? Now, let's look at the book of Genesis and see some facts from the book of Genesis. Now, I got Genesis chapter 2, verse 9, 10, and 11, okay? Now, we're talking about the Garden of Eden. And in Genesis 2:9, it talks about, trees, two special trees in the garden. Then the garden had a lot of different trees, but it only mentions two specifically by name. And there was a river that flowed from Eden with four connections. Okay? A river with four connections, and that river pretty much watered the garden. That's what the scriptures say. Okay? Genesis 2:10, it starts to name the rivers. Okay, it says, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads. A river became four. One river became four rivers. Okay, now Genesis 2:11. The first was Pison. That was the first one. The second was Gihon. Okay, the third and the fourth. The third was Hiddekel. The fourth was Euphrates. Okay. Now, Hiddekel had another name. If you can look at the translations down below, it says it's called the Tigris River. Okay. Hiddekel is an ancient name, but Tigris is a name that we're familiar with. And most translations, you know, did their research and figured out, okay, that's what the Hiddekel River is. It was the Tigris River. So some of you have heard of the Tigris River, and some of you have heard of the Euphrates River. So where are these rivers located? Because these rivers are associated with the Garden of Eden, right? And Gino said that the first man was African, right? So he's insinuating that the first man was created in Africa. That's what the insinuation is. That's what a lot of people believe, right? Africa, that's where life created. That's where life started. Okay. Now let's look at the rivers now. Let's go ahead and bring up a map. Okay. Now we see Africa here in the center, big continent, right? You can't miss it. You got Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Central African Republic. That's Africa. Now we look off to the right of Africa. What do we see? Okay. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Turkey, Lebanon. And what river do we see here? The Euphrates River. And if we look at the smaller maps that I got with the arrows, we see the Tigris River in Mesopotamia. This is part of the Asian continent. Yeah, yeah. It's part of the Asian continent. We see Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and the Euphrates is a big, bold river is running through that. Now, if you know anything about geography, anything, Euphrates River does not run through Africa. Does not. So, and when we read Genesis, we saw that the Garden of Eden and the Euphrates River were closely entwined and related. Okay? Are the wheels starting to turn a little bit? Hmm? So you may want to question, did life actually begin in Africa or not? All right, we read what the Bible said. We talked about the four rivers leading out from Eden. Euphrates was one of them. And the Gihon and the other one, they're not. No, they are nowhere to be found today. But these two are. Those traces are. Okay. So is Gino right, or is he just spreading more BS? Because he knows, just like Trump, and Trump supporters will believe everything Trump say, and so would Gino Jennings followers. Every word that comes out of his mouth, y'all take it as gold without doing any type of fact checking. Whose fault is that? Is it Gino's or his followers? Anyway, with that being said, I always get the facts. Fact check people. Fact check me. I dare you. Fact check me. Fact check me. Prove me wrong. That's the name of my channel. And I'll be the first to say I was wrong. I just need you to prove it. Until the next video, I'm out.